Hey friends, welcome to the Church Planting Podcast. I'm Greg Nettle and I serve as president of Stadia Church Planting, where our vision is to help every child on the planet have a church, the hope of Jesus and community that they can experience. We do this by helping you start thriving, growing, multiplying churches for the next generation. I'm really excited about this episode. Welcome to the Church Planting Podcast. So I'm here with my new friends, Angela and Gianni, and we actually had dinner together at Exponential this year in Orlando, Florida, and kind of connected. And I was just absolutely blown away by your story. So delighted to have you on the Church Planting Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
It's an honor to be
It's an honor, yeah.
You know, we hear this word thrown around a lot, the call of God on our lives. But sometimes, you know, it seems kind of nebulous. How do you know the call of God on your lives? How do you follow it? How do you stay with it? For me, it's been an incredibly important part of my journey, as you know from hearing my story. Angela, I'm just going to start out with you because as a very young lady, you had a very clear call.
Yes. So I grew up in England, in a very rural, very beautiful, idyllic part of England, the southwest, Cornwall, worth a vacation visit. And I grew up in a rural community, so a very, very beautiful but very small mindset kind of place. I had the honor of having godly grandparents and came to faith myself as a young girl of 10, which was very real, but very, very simple. And through my teenage years, my only dream was to be a farmer's wife. That was the world I knew best. That's where I felt most comfortable. And within that context, I thought I'll do my little bit as I follow Jesus. But I'd never had the opportunity to travel, never had a passport, never seen the capital city of London. But at 17, just with a plan to get engaged on my 18th birthday, I was dating a guy 4 years older than me, of course, a farmer, a family friend, a committed Christian. And at 17, though, we heard about mission teams going into Central Europe, short-term, 10 days. And it caught my attention for a once-in-a-lifetime trip because this guy's parents had bought us a big ranch to move into the following year as soon as we got married. So I knew how family farming businesses go. You're committed. So we said, no, we'll do this one-off trip. And decided on the nation of Austria simply because it was on the top of the list, beginning with A. And the appointment, the time was September. Well, my boyfriend at the time couldn't do it because it was harvest time, but he said, Angela, you go ahead and do it. Now then, for a very shy, introvert, simple little rural girl, this was a massive step for me. Joining a team of other young adults, I was the youngest, getting my passport in a minibus, heading across Europe for 2 days into a nation speaking German was like, wow. But I did it, intending to come back, continue the plan. 3 months later, engaged to be married. 9 months later, the wedding date was fixed. Well, I was in Austria. I saw the beauty. Yes, it's the place to go on vacation. But I couldn't understand in the little church we were serving with 15 older people. I kept asking, where are the teenagers and youth? They said, well, you're here to reach them. I said, you don't have any. They said, well, Angela, you must understand, in the whole nation of 9 million people, there are possibly 2,000 believers. I am talking about 43 years ago. I know you'll think I was much younger than 17, but just do your math and then you'll know just about where we sit, both of us of age. And so I was grieved that in this beautiful nation, obviously the young people didn't get the same opportunity as I had to know Jesus and to be part of a big youth group, which I was part of. And so after coming back to Cornwall, back to my job, back to riding my horse on the ranch, back to my boyfriend, I did what my granddad told me I should do, and that is every evening beside my bed, kneel down and talk to my Heavenly Father. I've been doing it since I was 10. So I asked him to take a look at Austria because I thought something in that little nation was not quite right. And because I was so shy and struggled to find words, lots of my praying was very quiet listening. And as I listened, I sensed my Heavenly Father saying, Angela, would you take another look at Austria? So I said, well, yes, I only know this one British missionary family. I'll pray for them and help them. And I did. And then a few nights later, Angela, would you look closer at Austria? And I said, well, what am I supposed to look at or think about? The missionary family. So I said, well, I'll commit to supporting them every month with just a little bit. I'd left money there for them to buy a washing machine because they didn't have one, 3 little children. I said, and next year, 9 months' time, when I get married, marrying into considerable wealth, I'll times my monthly commitment by 10. Within 6 weeks of being back home from that first trip, every evening praying for Austria, sensing a growing burden. But what then happened, I didn't expect. One evening, as I was listening, I sensed so strongly heaven speak and my Heavenly Father speak. And it was, Angela, I want more than your prayers for Austria. I want more than your money for the missionaries. I want you in Austria for the rest of your life. I was so shocked. I could not have been a more unsuitable candidate for doing anything that I even began to imagine. Even moving abroad, learning another language, leaving my family. My plans for the future were coming together so perfectly, but this call came every evening.
Got to unpack this a little bit. You're 17 years old. Now, I find it really interesting. You had prayers of your grandparents. I think about, the person who had one of the greatest impacts on my life personally as well was my grandmother, who prayed for me to become a preacher. Okay. And I think about that these days. And sometimes when leaders get a little bit older, they start to have grandchildren. I just want to encourage them that for your life and my life both, what a big deal praying grandparents make. And then it made me smile. It just made me smile because you said, my dream was to be a farmer's wife. And I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that before, in fairness, but I think I respect it and I love it. I mean, some kids grew up saying, I hope someday I could get to be a missionary, or hope I get to be a pastor or a preacher. But most of us had these other dreams. But we have these dreams, and God, when we listen, often disrupts and says, oh, no. I have something better for you. You, Angela, you might have thought you were going to be a rich farmer's wife and live the idyllic life in Cornwall and live the farm and ride your horses. But you're going to be a world changer for me. And I love that God disrupts our plans like that often and takes us in a different different direction.
Yeah.
Okay, Angela, I got to ask this though. You're 17 years old. You're engaged to be married. Living the dream is happening for you. But then how did your family react when they heard your call of God on your life?
To say that my whole little world, so my parents, my boyfriend at the time, his parents, my whole little world were not amused. In fact, I caused chaos in that little part of the world, although it was a Christian bubble in some ways. But no one traveled and no one definitely went on mission. And nobody in my world I'd ever heard them say, I'm giving my life for a nation. And the amazing thing was I was still very shy and introvert, but answering the call of God set something of fire within me. And I tell you, Greg, it was unstoppable. I think I scared some people. My parents were like, what? They would use words like, you're just being hard-headed and stubborn. This is just a phase. You just need to get out of it. And it was like, no, no. And I had a determination planted in me with a love for a nation, paired with an incredible naivety and childlike faith. So just another point was God said to me, and he said to me every Wednesday from then on, because Wednesday was my prayer and fasting day. Every Wednesday to the simple little girl, he said, I give you Austria, Angela. And do you know what? In my naivety, I said, thank you, I take it. And I mean,
wow.
that's like craziness. And so my world did not understand me for a very long time. It was a very lonely journey. And I suffered a lot of rejection because no one, not one person, only the missionaries in Austria, that I then connected to again, they understood that God was in this. But initially, no one understood it.
Where do you go from there to even move forward?
Well, I spent my vacations then. I was working in a bank at the time. I spent my vacations. So just 2 weeks here, 10 days there for the next 2 years, traveled across Europe as best I could. I was not skilled in it at all. I did some very unwise things, but God looked after me. So I spent my vacations serving the missionaries. But I couldn't move to Austria. Austria wasn't part of the European community. I couldn't get a work visa. So 2 years in, and I mean, everybody's questioning my call. And my ex-boyfriend is back on the farm, regularly begging me to change my plans. 2 years in, the missionaries, British missionaries, said, look, can we introduce you to our mission society? Maybe they will consider you as a single young woman. And so they opened a door, which I walked through. And at 19, I was accepted as a single young missionary with a criteria. And the criteria was I had to go through theological training, at least 2 years. I said, I will do anything. I can pay my own way. I will do anything if at the end of it, you will back me and get me to Austria. And so that was 2 years after the initial call, 2 tough years, where then I went off to Bible college, and that's where I met this guy. I wasn't looking for a husband. I'd been accepted as a single woman. I thought I'm going to go to Austria, serve the missionaries by looking after their children. That's the only thing I could have imagined doing.
Okay, so you end up going to a Bible seminary, Bible college, theological training. So Gianni, pick this up.
I come from the south of Italy, and I went to study in this college, which is in the south of England, south of London. And that's where I was studying. I was in my second year as Angela came as a first year. And I was training to then go back to Italy and be involved in Christian TV stations. And my pastor said, to do that, you should also have some biblical training and study theology and prepare yourself. So that's what I was there for. And with my plans were to go back to Italy until I met this lady. And when I shared with Angela, I talked to her about my feelings for her, and maybe there might be a future together. She was so focused, and she said to me, look, Gianni, if there should be a future together, then it will be in Austria, because Angela comes only in double pack, which is Angela and Austria, or no Angela at all. And so I thought, wow, I wasn't ready for that. I had to think quite a bit. And at one point I said to Angela, forget about it, because I'm not called to go to Austria. But then I felt so sure about our relationship that I asked myself, maybe God is calling me through Angela also to go to Austria. And to really cut a long story short, that's what happened. When people ask me, how did you get called to Austria from the south of Italy, living by the seaside in a beautiful part of Europe to go to Austria, learn German, and in a nation where there is no sea. Well, there are beautiful mountains, but it was just not what I would have chosen, unless God had called me to go to Austria. That's why then we married the year after Angela finished the Bible school, and basically we were both accepted as missionary candidates. And we raised, for about a year, we raised support to be able to live in Austria as missionaries. And that's where we spent the rest of our lives, really.
We moved there when we were 22 years old. We were just 6 months married. And we've lived, that's home for us. We live in Vienna today.
Yeah.
And we lived there for 38 years now as missionaries, which developed into church planters. We didn't go there as church planters.
No.
So I want to get into all the church planting stuff and what's going on now, because that's very cool. I mean, Angela's going there as a single young woman. She has no interest in getting married and certainly not of marrying you. And so, but kind of there was another miraculous intervention of God that takes place.
Yes, of course. When I said to Angela in one of our talks, let's forget about it, I thought I didn't want to mess up her future and not my future. So she was very disappointed. I mean, obviously she didn't tell me that, but she went very disappointed and said to God, what's going on? And God said to Angela, don't worry about it. By tomorrow morning, you will know. You will know. And so Angela went to bed that night thinking, I will have a dream. Something will happen that she will know. But what happened during that night, I went to a friend of mine who was also studying in Bible school, because I really wasn't sure that this, just forget it, was the right thing to do. And so I said to my friend Dewi, I said, look, I explained to him what it was, and I knew he was saying to me all the time, hey, Gianni, we are in Bible school, and we are focused on learning and studying and not relationships. He was always protecting me from going on off on a tangent of the relationship. And so, but he agreed to pray with me. And so we prayed a few hours during the night. And we were getting nowhere. We were asking God impressions and nothing was happening. So it was about 3 a.m. I said to my friend, look, we need to go to bed now. So you go back to your room and you pray for half an hour. I pray here in my room for half an hour. You write down on a piece of paper what God told you. I write down on a piece of paper what God told me. And we see if it is the same, then God spoke. Because I really wanted to make it hard for me to just, because of my feeling, go into a relationship that was not right. And so we left, went to his room. We prayed for half an hour. We came together. And then he came with a piece of paper in his hand, and I had a piece of paper also. So I said to him, show me what did you write? And he opened his hand, and on this piece of paper was written 1985. And I said to him, what is this? What do you mean? And he said to me, 1985 is the year when you will marry Angela. I was shocked. And he said to me, what did you write? And I opened my hand. I had written November 1985. And he said to me, what does that mean? And I said, this is when I will marry Angela in November 1985. And I mean, I was so shocked because I didn't expect that. We hadn't planned to write a date or anything. We just write the thoughts God gave you. And for me, that was what sealed it. That's why I didn't go to bed. I couldn't sleep. I waited until Angela came in the kitchen. She was cooking for the students. She had to come very early into the kitchen. And so I waited for her in the kitchen. And when she came in at 5 o'clock in the morning, she saw me standing there or sitting on the table. And she said, what are you doing there? And I said to her, I was up all night and I prayed. And God spoke to me. You and we belong together for the Lord in Austria, and we will marry in November 1985.
And
so I just jumped in the we did exactly that.
We did exactly.
Okay, so now let's come back to Austria. So you've been in Austria how many years now together?
38.
Yeah. And tell me, because this was, I loved hearing your story, the call and God honoring that. but I really love what's happening right now and how Stadia, I believe we're going to be getting involved in partnership with you. Tell us what's going on in Austria right now.
Well, if I can just very briefly give the context for everyone who's listening. So Austria is a little tiny nation. Many of you would have been on vacation because it's a beautiful place to come to. Set in the center of Austria, surrounded by nations, many of those Eastern European, but also Western European, just 9 million people living there. And it is such a wealthy nation that need is very, very difficult to see, to perceive, and to feel. But the need in the nation, the malnutrition, the hunger, the starvation is purely spiritual. So it's a religious nation. Those who've been there will have seen beautiful cathedrals and churches in every village, in every valley, in every place. But it's simply monuments to a religious past. And so when we moved there 38 years ago, there were truly just a couple of thousand born-again believers, disciples of Jesus in the whole nation. So after 3 years of serving and learning German, we were challenged by the Lord to move into a town, a little industrial town, and in our home, pray, reach out to people. And we've had the honor of the last 35 years leading many, many, mainly younger people to a living faith in Jesus.
Yeah, which it all started really in our living room. We started just in our home with one person, a second person, and a third person, and which then developed into what has become today.
And so we soon realized that leading people to Jesus was the first step, discipling them was the next step. But then if they were reaching out to their cousins or friends in different cities, and then after a long while of building trust and understanding, they would come to faith, there were no churches for them to go to.
Yep.
It wasn't just a church like the first one we'd started, the little church. There was none. We had to become church planters. And to become church planters in a nation where there's no Bible school, there's no heritage of evangelical churches, we had to then realize our first disciples, the first ones we lead to Jesus, we've got to train them up fairly fast to lead the little group that are starting in some of the other towns. So let's fast forward to today. We lead a network, a church planting network, where we planted 14 churches across various towns and cities in our little nation.
Yeah.
All of them led by Austrian men and women that we've led to faith, that we've discipled, trained, first of all, just in a boot camp, literally, and now in a more established leadership pipeline called the Leadership Academy. All of our Austrian leaders are bivocational. They plant church while working full-time jobs, because church planting starts with 2 people, 3 people in a home around a table. And now we're going to up the momentum, and with Stadia's help, this is going to be incredible. We're making church planting more accessible than ever before. We call it startups, and we look for a family or a couple of single people who will host a startup. And a startup is where you open your home, your heart, and your fridge, and you start building community.
Okay, I stopped there because I heard you say this before. You open your home, your heart, and your fridge. I've never heard it said like that, and write that one down. That's just a tremendous methodology for starting, to reach people for Jesus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Build community, basically. Build community.
And another maybe little slogan that might be helpful is we say, we embrace small and we celebrate slow. Now then, that is simply because the context we find ourselves in, it is still a pre-Christian nation, Austria. And so
I so appreciate that.
If we think we're going to start with a big congregation with music and lights, and we love all of that. The churches that we have established are modern, relevant, vibrant expressions of church. But we have to start in a community with a little beginning where we just say, small is beautiful. This is amazing. Celebrate slow, every little step.
Yeah.
We were 6 tonight. We were 5 the last 3 months. Tonight we were 6 of us. Whoa. And so that's our startups. And we help the host by putting alongside them one of our experienced pioneer pastors who one after the other we're believing to release into full-time ministry so that they can grow their own little church that they pioneered, but more so that they can care for and lead 2, 3, 4 startups in the towns around, because Austria only has 79 cities. We're in at 14 of them. That means we only have 65 to go. We've got 5 startups.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
only 60 to go.
We're down to 60.
We just started other 2, so 2 less.
So we just live for bringing the kingdom of God through planting local churches. We see local church as just the first step of kingdom influence.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If people want to learn about your ministry, what's the website URL that they can go to?
It www.impacteurope.info. And there are a number
Say
of
it again.
Impact Europe. www.impacteurope.info. And you will need on the first page to be sure you see our photo. There are a number of Impact Europe. See our photo. And our ministry of Impact Europe is planting churches, training leaders, and having kingdom influence.
Gianni and Angela, I'm so glad that you've been faithful to listen to the call of God on your lives and that you're in Austria. Thank you for being on the Church Planting Podcast. Can't wait to have you on again and to hear when all of those cities have been reached with a new church plant.
Yes.
Thank you, Greg. This has been an honor for us to share.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Church Planting Podcast. The Church Planting Podcast is part of the Stadia Podcast Network. To find more great episodes and to see how Stadia can help you start thriving, growing, multiplying churches for the next generation, be sure to check out stadia.org/podcasts.